Sometimes I tell you, it really doesn't feel like Canada is a serious place. We have a lot to take a look at today. Everything from Justin Trudeau apparently being swarmed by a group of liberal Indians that support him, or maybe not. It's kind of controversial. You're going to see in the video later. You have one of the most largest, that's a weird way of saying that, one of the biggest strikes to happen again in Canada, with Air Canada potentially just pretty much shutting their doors and not allowing anyone to fly. You also have a woman in Canada is being charged with assault with a weapon, but it wasn't a weapon. She was in a water gun fight with her local kids in her neighborhood, and she sprayed the wrong person, and that's leading to charges. Very, very bizarre. Oh, yeah, and I almost forgot. We're about to have a nuclear war. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Who needs coffee when the news is so stressful? Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel, and this is a Canadian channel, even though we're going to be talking about American stuff in a moment. I do like to start off by taking a look at the polls here in Canada. So you got Pierre Poilievre sitting at 212 projected seats, bottom line 181, top line at 234, still looking very good right there. Then you have Justin Trudeau at 77 projected seats. And what has just come out of Justin Trudeau's mouth is that he is, other than a little bit of jag meat, you know what I'm saying, is that he's very excited to go toe-to-toe with Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons in Parliament on Monday. Doesn't make any sense. He's always ran away from any debates or any accountability, but now he's ready to fight the fight, which is going to be entertaining to say the least. And now let's take a look at some American news before we get into the Canadian stuff. So you got Joe Biden, who not only was caught wearing a Trump 2024 hat, but he's also taken some photos with, I don't know, a group of kids or at a fire hall or something like that. And this kid behind him is wearing this shirt right here, Dumb and Dumber and Dumbest. And it's Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris. I'm not too surprised that Joe Biden finds himself in that position. And then you have Costco selling $99 emergency food kits that last 25 years. Do they know something that we don't? And we're going to be taking a look at that in a moment, because this is kind of crazy, folks. We are closer than we've ever been, increasingly more every single day, to a nuclear war.
Costco, which is like my happiest place in the world to be. And I've never seen anything like this before. They have buckets that they're just calling emergency food supply for 132 servings. And what is included in this bucket? I guess this is for when the apocalypse hits, which could be any time now, right? Who knows? We get teriyaki rice, a 6-serving pouch, pasta Alfredo, 6-serving pouch, cheesy macaroni, apple cinnamon cereal, tomato soup with pasta, creamy pasta and vegetables, brown sugar and maple multigrain cereal, all 6 servings for each. And then again, continuing on, barbecue beans, vanilla pudding, orange drink mix, whey milk alternative, Southwest rice and beans, and chicken flavored noodle soup.
So the whole shebang. Apparently Costco, and this might be only in America, but at one of the countries is Costco, you can get your full preparedness kit, which is just insane to think about. And then you have Kamala Harris has increased her advantage over Donald Trump nationally after a debate that voters largely think she won, according to a new Reuters poll. Let me know down in the comments who you think won that debate. And then in other Trump news, you have a judge throws out 2 charges Trump faces in Georgia election case. So it seems like all the charges that they tried to lay on Donald Trump, they're all being thrown out, which is not being covered in mainstream media. Very, very interesting. Then you have Aiden Ross, who recently moved to Toronto, Canada, saying, hey, man, I didn't expect there to be a whole bunch of Indians here.
Somebody needs to explain why. Why are there so many Indians in Canada? What am I missing here? Can somebody please explain why the fuck there's so many Indians here? Please. I gotta understand why. Please tell me. Please. Can somebody please explain?
Temporary foreign worker program and flawed immigration, Mr. Aiden Ross. Would love to talk to you about that anytime you ever want about Canadian immigration on a stream with you. That'd be kind of interesting. And then you have breaking. Trump rules out additional debates with Kamala. That's it. People are saying it's because Kamala destroyed him. Other people are saying it's because ABC News was extremely biased against Trump. But let me know what you guys think about Trump refusing another debate. And then you have scary, scary articles like this. U.S. close to agreeing on long-range missiles for Ukraine, delivery to take months. And this was just posted a few days ago, September 3rd. So that's something that America is trying to give to Ukraine. Long-range missiles that can go from Ukraine into the heart of Russia. And Russia's not pleased with that, as you can imagine. So much so that today, Putin had this to say about the entire ordeal. This would mean that NATO countries, the United States and European nations are at war with Russia. And if that's the case, considering the fundamental shift in the nature of this conflict, we will make the appropriate decisions based on the threats posed to us, which is very, very, very scary to think about, especially since Russia changed their nuclear doctrine. I just typed in that exact thing on Google, and you're brought up with all of these different articles that can explain it into further detail should you wish to follow up with that. And then also America has somewhat recently updated their nuclear doctrine. It just seems like if Kamala Harris wins, if the Democrats win in this next election, you saw Trump talk about it, right? Trump said, if Kamala wins, Israel is going to be nuked off the face of the earth, right? And that seems to be true. It seems like the only one that actually and actively is concerned and talking about his concerns of nuclear war is Donald Trump. And that's a very real thing. We are so close to that happening. And it's the end of the world. No more YouTube, no more going to work, no more money, no more family, no more friends, nothing. Poof, we're all dead. And if the nuclear war, if a bomb doesn't hit you, then just the fallout of it all is going to block out the sun and we're all going to freeze to death anyways. So we really need some proper leadership that's in the Oval Office in America to properly negotiate with other countries around the world with BRICS to make sure that we don't have that level of war. But the Democrats don't seem to care about that. And that is extremely scary. And then you got the little chihuahua Justin Trudeau on the global scale that takes all these weird digs at Putin. Last time I checked on a map, Canada is pretty freaking close to Russia. And we are also a target. We are very vulnerable to Russia's missiles. Canada doesn't have any nuclear weapons. Canada is like, whoa, man, peace, brother. That is Canada's military policy and nuclear warfare policy. It's a freaking weird thing that we just rely on America to do literally everything for us, and we can't hold our own, but Justin Trudeau likes to pretend that we can. So if you've never been worried about nuclear warfare, I don't want to say you should be worried, but you should kind of be worried. And then let's get into some Canadian news. So for anyone who's in Toronto who takes the TTC, you've probably enjoyed some free public Wi-Fi service brought to you by Rogers. Well, that is going to come to an end at the end of this year, and it really wasn't that long. You see the top comment here, that lasted a while, LOL. That's because it was quite recently. Like, I don't think it's been around for even 5 or 10 years. So yeah, sucks that sucks, I guess so. And then you have nearly 80% of Canadians find tip requests inappropriate for fast food and takeout orders, according to a new survey conducted by Narrative Research. And you're finding the tip machine everywhere you go, whether it's at like a McDonald's, any fast food joint, whether it's self-checkout. I've seen that, the craziest thing, self-checkout. Whether you go into a coffee shop and you self-serve yourself or whatever, there's just tips everywhere. And it feels very disingenuous that that burden is put on the consumers for employers that are too lazy and too cheap to properly compensate their staff to then say, hey, we know you're in here to buy something. How about you give more money? Like, it's even at grocery stores. I've seen that at grocery stores where either through self-checkout, which is insane. How do you tip self-checkout? for crying out loud. Sometimes I feel like I'm employee of the month when I go to self-checkout. It's craziness. But let me know down in the comments if you guys are pro-tipping, if you're against it, if you're wanting to tip every single place, every single where that you go, which is an interesting thing considering we have less money now than we ever have. And then there's this video of Justin Trudeau that's resurfaced by the amazing Zoltan here. Let's take a look.
Today, in honor of the 4th Annual National Victims of Crime Awareness Week. Victims of crime are not unique to any area of the country. Every parliamentarian represents constituents whose lives have been traumatized by the selfish acts of those who have no regard for the law. We must stand by all those who need assistance and support, and remember that in the scale of justice, the lives in the balance are not simply the criminals for rehabilitation, but the victims too. I encourage all of my colleagues to reach out to victims in their communities and provide a voice for their concerns in this House of Commons.
So I know we're just watching an older video of Justin Trudeau sneezing in the House of Commons, but I gotta say, he's an idiot. Even the way he sneezes, or the way he used to sneeze, he just looks like an idiot. And at the end, making fun of that little sneeze, just such a weird freaking little munchkin Justin Trudeau is. And then you've got Global News here saying over half of Canadians don't want an early election, says Ipsos polling. And then in the comment section, the top comment is, do Canadians want an early election? 5,000 votes, 95% of people said yes. And when you actually look at this Global News report of them claiming that Canadians don't want an early election, let's just take a look at this. And there's a very specific thing that stands out.
New Ipsos polling done exclusively for Global News shows an uptick in support for both the Liberals and Conservatives after the NDP ended its supply and confidence deal with the Liberals last week. Over half of Canadians surveyed, that's 56%, feel the
All right, so you have 1,000 people. It's very conveniently almost grayed out, where if your eyes are blurred, if you're standing far away, you wouldn't be able to see that the way that you'd be able to see the top text. This is 1,000 people that have voted in these polls, and they're claiming that that's what the majority of Canadians want. Well, let me just remind you, the viewer, or Global News, or whomever, the government, for any government employees that are watching, that I did an independent poll on my community tab. Do you want an election right now? 22,000 votes, not 2,200, not 22,000. 97% of people said yes. And that was 7 days ago. So I'll give them that. So I did another vote today. Now, at the time that I pulled this screen up, this was 45 minutes after I did the poll, but I'm recording this a little bit later in the day. So let me just refresh it and see what we have. 6.3 thousand votes in 3 hours. 95% of people say yes. So I'm not really sure where Global News is making the claim that people don't want an early election when I just blew their polling numbers into oblivion and people really want a early election. And then you have posts like this that are making their rounds on social media. Investigate Pierre Putin. Investigate Pierre Putin. Investigate Pierre Putin. Investigate Pierre Putin. You get the point. People are saying, hey, look, Pierre Poilievre needs to be investigated because of these ties with Putin, with Russia. And these same people that are making these types of allegations online, they don't seem to care about the 11 treasonous MPs that are still to this day unknown to the general public, in Parliament, internally known, and will be on the next election ballots. That is absolutely insane. Why aren't Liberals jumping to that one, saying, hey, whoa, there is confirmation that there's 11 treasonous MPs? We should do something about that. No, instead they're worried about the leader of the opposition accidentally, apparently, someone on his team using Russian stock footage, Russian fighter jets or whatever, and going, ha ha, we got them. Meanwhile, Liberal MPs are literally labeled as treasonous by the government and by government agencies. But yeah, sure, let's investigate Pierre Putin. Why don't we? And then, to just make you giggle a little bit more, because if you don't giggle, you might laugh, you have it's cute that Americans think the U.S. has a housing bubble. When you look at the stats, that Canada is literally in its own playing field. This is so outrageous. Now, look, I don't want to take away from other countries that are experiencing a housing crisis and, inflation, but Canada has kind of been leading the charge. At least that's the information that we have, and the statistics that we have is Canada is leading the charge on that. And so, yes, other countries are having it bad to their own, determination, but it is insanely bad here in Canada. And it's no wonder why people are wanting to leave this country faster than they enter. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. A lot of people are wanting to enter Canada illegally, but that's a different story for another day. Then you have Jagmeet Singh, who accuses Justin Trudeau of wanting fancy things while wearing a Rolex and dressed in a $5,000 tailor-made suit. Kind of crazy that he criticizes other people for wanting fancy things when he is literally always has a multi-thousand, a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 Rolex on his wrist.
Well, let's be really clear. This is about the Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau's party, wanting fancy things for their friends while Canadians can't even afford a home. That's what this is all about. And we've seen that again and again we've seen it with Liberals and with Conservatives. And we want to make sure that we're being very prudent and responsible with the way we spend our federal and public money. Well,
kind of funny that he's such a hypocrite. This is probably why Jagmeet Singh is going to have the worst polling that you have ever seen the NDP pull off. Almost like his little coalition, his ex-boyfriend, Justin Trudeau. And then you have this crazy story that's making its way across Canadian news here. An aggressive cougar, not the ones you find at a bar, continues to visit resident Jessica, who lives in Alberta, after killing one of the family members' barn cats and growling at the back door where her daughter frequently plays.
Certainly a concerning incident after a cougar visited a family's home just west of here, not once but twice yesterday, coming back around last night. A warning, some of the images in this next story some viewers may find disturbing. Jessica Lowe and her young daughter Aubrey spotted a cougar outside their home early yesterday afternoon. Separated by only a glass door, they realized it had just killed one of their barn cats, Oreo. Lowe says the young wild cat, believed to be under 2 years old, hissed and seethed, looking directly at her daughter, who only moments before sat inside near the door to have her lunch. The cougar did eventually leave on its own. Lowe contacted her neighbors to warn them and called Fish and Wildlife. Officers searched the area but didn't find the cougar, but advised the family to be vigilant and buy bear spray. Lowe says she was shaken for hours, especially since her children do spend time outside in the backyard.
And that blurred image is a dead cat. That's absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. I can't imagine what that family is going through. And then you have Harrison Faulkner, works for True North, says this on X. Surrey resident and Burnaby resident were arrested and charged with drug trafficking offenses after officers seized 4.2 kilos of fentanyl, approximately 2.3 million lethal doses, 12.7 kilos of meth, which is wild, 10.6 kilos of coke, 1.6 kilos of ketamine. Police released the two men back on the streets pending court appearances. And you see the top comment here says, literally this happens every single month in Vancouver. I've stopped caring. It feels like this increased level of crime, super dangerous crime. Oh my God, 2-point-something million lethal doses of drugs. That's wild that this is even happening. And where is the drug enforcement in Canada? Why is it that these cops pride themselves on catching people after the crime has been committed? It doesn't make any sense. I feel like there is either a shortage of police or a shortage of investigators, or they're allowing this to happen and then letting them back out on the streets pending court. What could possibly go wrong? And speaking of what could possibly go wrong, now we are heading into one of the most bizarre stories coming out of Canada, at least in recent years. A 53-year-old Simcoe woman has been charged with assault with a weapon after accidentally spraying a neighbor in a local street water gun fight.
A Simcoe woman has found herself in hot water after an incident involving a water gun. She says a neighbor called police after she accidentally sprayed him with a toy water gun. Not only did police show up, but they charged her. CTV's Jeff Pickle joining us now with more on this. And Jeff, really no laughing matter here. The woman facing a rather serious charge.
Tony, very serious. And Wendy Washik is a 58-year-old educational assistant. She says she was playing around with some kids from the neighborhood at a backyard barbecue when she accidentally hit the neighbor with the water from the water gun. Police were called and they have laid a charge of assault with a weapon.
Yeah, very similar to that, like a pump style.
On most days, it's a harmless toy. But right now, a water gun is a major source of anxiety for 58-year-old Wendy Washik.
I've cried myself to sleep many nights.
According to Washik, she was visiting neighbors in a backyard and started playing with some of the kids.
And because I love kids and work with kids, I asked him if he had any water guns, and he said, yeah.
Washik says she was chasing one of the kids from the backyard to the front yard when the incident happened.
I was trying to figure out how the water gun was working. It's not like I play with water guns at this age. As I was going through the gate, and it accidentally hit the neighbor that was like maybe 3 feet away cutting his grass.
She says the man called police, who arrived and spoke with him, but she says police never talked to her.
They had told my husband to bring your wife out of the backyard, that I'm being charged with assault with a weapon. They didn't ask me one single question. They didn't interview one single person.
Washik, who works as an educational assistant, says she has been put on leave by her school board.
And the mental and financial stress that has been put on my family, my children, and my husband is not right and is not fair.
Neighbors say they've had ongoing issues with the man who phoned police.
Lots of neighbors, police called on him, and they're constantly here.
It's been a reoccurring issue on the street of police being at his house for very minor issues.
Bobby and her son Liam say they crossed the street just to avoid the man's home.
The friends are allowed to come to our house, but we no longer allow them to come to this house.
The neighbors we spoke with say they feel police are being weaponized against them.
I don't think it should be that way. I think our system's really messed up when it comes to that.
No one talks to anyone anymore to sort things out. It's always, I'm a victim, straight to it, and I'm going to weaponize the government or the law. And it's just extremely infuriating. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that story. And now we're taking a look at this Air Canada strike. So you had a panel here where people that got together and they gave a speech. You have business lobby groups are now calling for government to impose back-to-work legislation if talks between Air Canada and its union fails.
No one wins in a strike, but a labor disruption would cause a lot of harm to a lot of people. Small businesses, manufacturers, just-in-time delivery, patients with severe healthcare consequences, in some cases, life or death, delayed cargo payments, tourism, our rural communities who rely on the networks, job losses for Canadians who rely on air. Members of Parliament can't get to their own ridings. You can't even report the news on site. A one-day strike would take 1 full week to recover from. We just saw that in our railway experience. Canada's brand and reputation is affected. We've had strikes at ports, we've had strikes at airports, our railways, our public sector, our airlines now. All of these impacts the reliability of Canada. And let me stress the importance that this has on our US-Canada relationship. This will particularly affect our relationship with our #1 trading partner and our neighbor, the US, a country whose interdependence we know too well. Negotiations are best done at a table, and they're best resolved at the negotiating table. And frankly, I think all of us hope, I know all of us hope, that an agreement can be reached before the deadline. However, if not, governments are elected to look after the greater good. This government has the tools available, and should collective bargaining fail, they need to prepare now to use them. Let me be clear. Canada and Canadians cannot afford another disruption to our economy.
No, we cannot. And this, honestly, this all all of this, if not the majority of this, falls on Justin Trudeau. The sanctions or the restrictions that he imposed on pilots and on airlines during the COOF and stuff like that, had detrimental consequences to our airline industry. Not to mention the fact that our pilots are heavily underpaid in comparison to other countries. You have people that could be a pilot here in Toronto, Vancouver, potentially make $150,000 a year. Yes, that is phenomenal money. But when they could do the exact same job working for Delta down in America, or just even something that's right on the border of America and Canada, but on the stateside, they would be making, $230,000 a year, and that's in USD. So they're making more money pre-conversion, but also more money on paper. So they're making 50, 60, 70% more working in America. So we have an insane shortage of airline pilots. And I know you're thinking, oh, who cares, man? Right? Like pilots they get paid a lot of money and air tickets are very expensive. I get that whole argument of the side of the argument as well. But airline industry is super important. I think it's like 30% or maybe 40% of the actual cargo space, and every single plane is used to transfer goods, right? Either through mail, whether it's products, like whatever it is, you name it. So this would have super huge repercussions on our economy, and the government does need to get, I think, a little bit more involved in these negotiations and start to do the right thing and make sure that, hey, Canadian workers need to be properly compensated. And yes, every sector does need to go up in wages. And I think that, we should probably prioritize the ones that are saying, hey, we're not going to work and we're going to screw everything up for everyone else. But this is what Justin Trudeau has had to say about the matter here. He gave 19 seconds of his time. Thank you, Senior Leader Justin Trudeau.
Of course, we've been following the Air Canada situation closely. We remain firm that the best deals happen at the bargaining table, and that's where parties need to keep working. The minister's actually going to be meeting with the parties today to impress on them the fact that millions of Canadians are counting on everyone to get this resolved.
He barely gives anyone any time of day, and he gave 45 seconds of his time for when they had the railway lockout. But let's take a look at a bit of a mainstream media video here about the entire situation.
Now to the travel anxiety about a potential Air Canada shutdown and calls from the business community for the government to do something to step in and stop it from going ahead. With me is Duncan Dean. He's the former Air Canada Chief Operating Officer. Duncan, as always, good to see you this morning. So let's first of all talk about these business groups. What are they hoping to achieve by sending this message to the federal government?
I think the business groups are basically trying to get the government to somehow push the parties closer to a deal, which is frankly what everybody should be asking, not just the federal government, but both parties to do. This is not a pleasant situation for not just Canadian travelers, but communities across the country who could be facing tremendous disruptions to the air transportation system.
What could the government do?
Well, I'm not really quite sure what the government could do. At this point in time, the Minister of Labour appears to be using moral suasion and using the power of his office to push both parties to stay at the bargaining table until they get a deal. And I think that that's probably the extent of what they can do at this point in time, which is basically to get both parties to find ways to look at potential compromises so that the impasse can be resolved and both parties can achieve a collective agreement without disrupting the travel plans of hundreds of thousands of Canadians.
Okay, so they are still negotiating, and I want to ask you, from your experience, Air Canada pilots want a salary comparable to that of U.S. pilots. Is that possible?
Look, I think that the notion that Air Canada can somehow offer pilots parity with the U.S. Is a little bit misguided to the extent that both compensation models are completely different. You've got U.S. circumstances which don't exist in Canada, such as private health insurance. You've also got many pilots in the United States who don't enjoy traditional pensions, whereas many Air Canada pilots do. And so, you've got to do this from an apples to apples comparison perspective and not pick and choose the elements of compensations from other countries and other jurisdictions and, somehow make them fit into the Canadian context.
We have to talk about passengers because many people right now are freaking out about what this means for them over the next couple of days. What should they be anticipating?
Well, I think that for the next couple of days, they should be keeping an eye out for communications from Air Canada. In many instances, Air Canada has already provided them with greater flexibility to change their travel plans if they're able to. And what they should also be doing is looking at potential alternatives where those exist. When you're talking about 110,000 travelers every single day aboard 670 flights, there aren't 110,000 empty seats sitting in the Canadian air transportation system. So unfortunately, if there is a strike and there is a disruption of service, for many travelers, the only option will be to cancel their trip.
Duncan, what would be the knock-on effect if there is some sort of work stoppage? What does it mean for other Air Canada employees who work in different departments?
Well, a lot of that, Marcia, will depend on how long the strike lasts. In the initial phase, Air Canada is planning on operating about 20% of its network, which is operated by pilots from its regional partners like Jazz and Provincial Airlines in Newfoundland. And so, parts of the operation will continue. So airline employees, at least for the time being, will likely continue to be at work. However, if the strike drags on or if the lockout drags on, depending on what ends up happening, it could completely upend the jobs of thousands of Air Canada employees who aren't involved in the strike.
Duncan, thanks so much. Duncan D is the former Air Canada chief operator.
And you're finding this in a lot of different sectors, not just the airline sector, but a lot of sectors are saying, hey, compared to America, we're not really even compensated a fraction of what they are. So what's stopping me from going over there and working, making a lot more money, and then eventually relocating to Canada, if that even makes any sense? And let me know if that's ever been something that's applicable to you. I think what Canadians can kind of agree on as a majority is we don't make enough money and our cost of living is extremely high. It's not sustainable. And then next up, we're going to take a look at this very interesting and viral clip of Justin Trudeau seemingly getting swarmed at what appears to be a Liberal barbecue here.
Oh, hang in there. All right. That's right. Ishan, that's right.
So I want to direct your attention, almost like a Where's Waldo, try and spot Justin Trudeau's security. You got this guy right here, likely, right? Seems like it. You've got maybe the cotton head right there, right? The gray hairs. Then you've got maybe this guy right here. Looks like he's wearing a vest and a walkie-talkie. And then this guy, obviously, he's got, a headset on. And then you've got this dwarf here, or whatever this person is called, this 5'0" woman, just like the Secret Service that failed Trump, which led to, him getting shot in the head and luckily surviving. She is a security detail, it appears. So keep your eyes on her.
I'm going around this way, so go to the other side. This is crazy. Careful.
Okay, so a couple takeaways from this, right, is that it just seems very irresponsible for the prime minister of a country, the leader of a country, to put himself in this position. This comment has absolutely nothing to do with the demographic here that we see. But as you saw, during the Trump rally, right, he was on stage, you had security that failed. I'm not saying that security is going to fail right now, but you're right on a forest. I don't know. We don't know if Justin Trudeau has security detail out in that forest. It appears like maybe where my cursor is right now, there might be someone over there. You've got some lingering people over here. I'm just saying from a security standpoint, and there's no reason for me to believe that this was like that there was heightened levels of security. It's a little bit of anxiety inducing to see, you know, a leader of a country in a crowd of people like that. And even if it is his own supporters, to be in the literal middle of a crowd like that, swarmed by people, just seems highly, highly irresponsible, especially after what we just saw with the failure of the Secret Service, which is leaps and bounds ahead of Canada, or supposed to be, happened to Donald Trump, where he wasn't even swarmed. He was giving a rally. There was clearly a visible person on a roof, and then they got a shot, multiple, I think 8 shots on Donald Trump, grazing his ear. Look, I don't like Justin Trudeau. I don't condone any violence towards Justin Trudeau. I think that we can absolutely vote our way out of this, and that is the only possible way to go about this. And just as I would like to give a little bit of an opinion or some guidance towards Justin Trudeau's security detail, this is highly irresponsible to put the leader of a G7 country, the leader of Canada, in a crowd of people like that. Why not, if people are trying to take pictures, why not have Justin Trudeau at a booth with his security detail and have everyone line up and take photos? It just seems so freaking weird. And you don't see this with Pierre Poilievre. When you go to one of his rallies, yes, he's in the middle of a crowded area, but there's always a lot of space between him and the crowd. And I'm not saying that Pierre's rallies are dangerous, nor should they, you assume that they should ever be dangerous. There's no reason for them to be dangerous. Canadians are not inherently dangerous and violent people like we've seen from other countries, but it just seems irresponsible with the heightened political tension. And, you know, like, for crying out loud, you got Jewish schools that get shot up in Canada. So yeah, things are getting a little crazy here in Canada. So for the leader of a country, as much as I dislike the guy, I feel like this is highly, highly irresponsible from his security detail, from his advisors, to put himself in that position in that crowd. And you saw his security was panicking. They were panicking when they zoomed in on their faces, man. They were like, holy crap, man, this is a lot of people. This is crazy. And Trudeau's trying to take photos, and it's just an absolute disaster. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? I just feel like there should be a few more precautions that are taking place to avoid such a disaster. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then Justin Trudeau did give some speeches afterwards. We can take a quick look at that here. The video is already super long anyways, so might as well.
As member of Parliament, and I had the opportunity to share the seat in the House of Commons, I can tell you that he has the passion that an elected representative needs, and he has the authenticity that the elected representative needs. And most importantly, each and every one of you will agree that he is a man of ordinary working class Canadians, and everyone have an access to him.
He's definitely not an ordinary Canadian. All right, so that's where we're going to end this video. It's extremely long. I do apologize for the length of this, and I will try to shorten the videos. I know a lot of people don't have 30 minutes, 40 minutes to sit around, but I try to accumulate as much information into one video as possible. And for those that are still lingering towards the end of the video, thank you so much for watching the full thing to the very end. I'd like to encourage everyone who hasn't yet already to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.